Thanks, Mel. Well, I'm going to just begin. I always disappear before a talk so I can kind of gather my thoughts. And I always tell my students, the beginning is really important because otherwise you lose them, right? The first few minutes. So what do you begin with? How you begin a story, how you begin a book, how you begin a photograph. It's always a story within the picture, within the story. So what's my beginning? At least 5 or 6 of you tonight have asked me, where are you from? Where are you from, Father?
Out of town.
Out of town? Like where? Where are you from?
I'm originally from Nigeria.
No, originally?
From Nigeria.
What does originally mean? You mean you're not from Nigeria now? Are you an American?
I'm a U.S. citizen, yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. So you're a U.S. citizen. Where are you from, Father?
I don't know. Yeah, I came from India. Mother Teresa's country.
Okay. Father, where are you from?
The United States.
There you go. Well, I think it's a really interesting question. Where are you from? Where are you from? Does that mean where was I born? What were my parents? Where were they from? America, I mean, we're kind of a mix of, we're from all over. My mother was Norwegian. My father was half Norwegian, half German. My parents met on a cruise boat, if you can believe it. Yes, they met on a cruise boat. Did you ever see that love story? The love story? That's how they met, on a cruise boat. But my father held up the boat for 3 hours because he was visiting a relative in Bergen. And so he was standing on the deck, and all the passengers were on the deck waiting for that crazy American when he finally came on board. And 6 months later, they got married. So, and then they moved to England. So where am I from? I was born in outside London, in Harpenden, Hertfordshire. And then we moved to Portugal and lived there for 6 years. And then we lived in Italy for several years, in Rome. And from Rome, we lived in the US for a short time. And then we lived in Brazil. My father worked in Brazil for 8 years. So we kind of country hopped. And then eventually, I obviously, for the first time, began living permanently in the US when I went to college at the University of Michigan, and then eventually to New York City and went to the graduate program at NYU in journalism. So where am I from? I don't know. I really don't. Where do I live now? I live in Ada, Oklahoma. And my student here, who knows it all, Cameron, is in my documentary class. It's the first semester I've had him. He's an excellent student, and he's going to be doing some traveling with me to work on my second book and documentary on Mother Teresa. Come and see part 2. So we are actually going to Tijuana next month to meet with the missionary charity sisters in Tijuana, and then this summer to India. And Father gave me the name of the home. This is how my book evolved. This is how things evolve. Father gave me the names of this home in Trivandrum in South India, in Kerala, where there's a home for unwed mothers. So yes, I'm going to get on a train. We're going to get on a train. We're going to go there. That's how I do my stories. I hear about them and I go. I hear about somebody and I go. So where am I from? I don't know. I think that when I die, the first thing I'm going to hear is, where are you from? I don't know. I think I came from God. So I'm going to read for a little bit because I like to write, and then I segue, and then I go back into my stories. But I want to tell you a story. a story told to me by one of Mother Teresa's sisters, the 18th sister to join the Order of the Missionaries of Charity. I met Sister Tarcisia in Kolkata in 2007 at a medical clinic where she and about a dozen other of Mother Teresa's first sisters were gathered for a general doctor's visit. And it was in my dream. It was my dream come true to discover what it was like to be with Mother Teresa in the early years, in the 1950s, when she first had that calling that Jesus gave her on that journey to Darjeeling in 1947. "Won't you quench my thirst?" he asked her. He asked her that on that train ride. "Won't you go into the poor slums of the world and take care of my poor?" It was in response to this call that Mother left the Loretta Order and the Catholic Girls' School where she had taught and worked for 2 decades. Her call was to serve the poorest of the poor. But let me tell you this story, and then you must not tell anyone. She relayed the story of a young crippled girl who Mother used to carry to the altar each morning for communion. But after that train ride to Darjeeling one morning, the girl stood up and walked alone to the altar. Later, Sister Tarcisia, you're the first ones to hear this, asked Mother, "Was that a miracle, Mother?" And Mother said, "Don't tell anyone." She crossed her lips with the sign of the cross. Have you heard a similar story from the Bible? When Jesus performed a miracle and crossed his lips and told his disciples, "Don't tell anyone." The true miracle was Mother Teresa's devotion to Jesus and to her calling. Catholic Charities works tirelessly to ease the suffering and to collaborate with charitable organizations to assist in improving the quality of life for members of their community. So Catholic Charities provides this space that gives back the dignity to those, many of those who have lost that dignity in their own lives. Let me tell you another story. I had the great fortune to travel to Rome for Mother Teresa's beatification, October 19th, 2003. I accompanied a group of pilgrims from Charlotte, North Carolina, led by the retired Bishop Curlin. He took us first to Assisi, home of one of the greatest saints of the Church, St. Francis of Assisi. It was in Assisi that Bishop Curlin shared with us the many stories from his 20 years being a friend and confidant to Mother Teresa. This is a story he told us. He traveled to India once, long time ago, 20 years ago, and he met Mother in her office area. Well, she didn't really have an office. As a matter of fact, I don't think they had more than a manual typewriter, one typewriter when I was there. And you could kind of hear it go. And so he went to Mother Teresa, and Mother Teresa said to him, "Would you like to meet Jesus?" And Bishop Curlin told us this in one of the basilicas in Assisi just before we took that bus to Rome for the beatification. And so Bishop Curlin told us, I thought, oh my gosh, Mother's going to introduce me to Jesus. Where's he hiding her? Or where's she hiding him? Maybe he's in the closet. He was seriously, these thoughts were going through his mind. And so she said, "Come with me, follow me." And they went out on the streets of Calcutta, and they walked down the street, and she saw this man lying in despair on the sidewalk, dying. And she knelt down beside him and picked him up in her arms and said, "This is Jesus." That was one of the many stories that Bishop Curlin told us in Rome, and I videotaped most of that trip, including the journey to the beatification which was unbelievable. In 2004, I met Monsignor John Esseff, the spiritual director for the contemplative branch of the Missionaries of Charity. He painted a picture of a courageous yet humble woman who would never take no for an answer. This is that story. These are little snippets I'm giving you from my second book, Come and See, Part 2. Mother Teresa wanted to open a home in the Vatican. And so she was on her way to meet with Pope John Paul II. And they were in a car. And suddenly she saw a man lying on the street in Rome. And she said, "Stop the car." And the sister said, "But Mother, we're going to be late for our meeting with the Holy Father." And Mother looked up at her sister and said, "Tell the Holy Father that I'm with Jesus." Eventually, she met with Pope John Paul II, and she established a home in the Vatican, and they have a soup kitchen there, which I will be visiting this Christmas with my son. And it's just so fortunate that we are going to Rome, Italy, and where I once lived for 3 years, and now I'm going under very different circumstances. And the sister who's in charge of the archives for the Missionaries of Charity for the cause of canonization of Mother Teresa was one of the sisters who opened the AIDS hospice home in Atlanta, Georgia, when I lived in Atlanta and when I first met Mother Teresa. So she had emailed me. They are on email now, by the way. They didn't used to be. It's pretty phenomenal. They've really entered the new age. It used to be if you tried to call the Missionaries of Charity, nobody answers the phone. They still don't answer the phone. But she emailed me and said, "Oh, Linda, you're coming to Rome. Would you please, I know you're busy, have fun in Rome, but would you mind speaking for 80 of our sisters?" Really? Says, "Oh, most of our sisters have never met Mother Teresa. So for you to come and share stories, because you've met so many people who knew Mother Teresa, will you come and share those stories with our sisters in Rome?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, sure." So since 2003, I've interviewed about 10, 15 people already who are very close to Mother Teresa, and that journey will continue for another 2 years. Now I'm going to teach you a prayer. A prayer that Mother Teresa created with a priest, a Marian Franciscan priest who I met on the Alitalia flight back from the beatification in Rome, Father James McCurry from Baltimore, Maryland. When she was with him, he was giving a retreat for her sisters. And Mother said to him, like she always does, "Oh, Father, I have a great idea." She loves that. "I have a great idea. You create a prayer for me, one that I can say on my 10 fingers. She liked to count prayers on her fingers, like the rosary almost, but with her fingers. And Father James said, I spent a day with him in Baltimore, and Father said, oh, no, why don't you just create your own prayer, Mother? You're very qualified to create prayers. And she says, no, Father, I want you to create the prayer. He said, very well. I have it, Mother. This is the prayer. He goes, Dear Mary, say your fiat and Magnificat in my soul. 10 fingers. Because she wanted a prayer to Mary. Because the Mother's Missionaries of Charity has been consecrated to Mary. And Mother said, yes, very good. But, however, and Father James said, that's when she began editing my prayer. She goes, how about instead of Dear Mary, we say Mother Mary. Instead of say your fiat, we say pray your fiat. and Magnificat, instead of in my soul, we say in my heart. So the edited prayer became, Mother Mary, pray your fiat and Magnificat in my heart. Isn't that beautiful? Next story, Father Groeschel, Father Benedict Groeschel. He was in a terrible car accident in 2004. He's a commentator and a wonderful speaker for EWTN. And I kept trying to get through to him because I knew he had worked closely with Mother Teresa. And he has two secretaries who you cannot get through. You cannot get through to Father Groeschel because of these two secretaries. You know how they are. They can act really nice on the surface, but you have to get through the secretaries who are really mean. So finally, I kept calling. I'm very persistent too. If I want to get a story, I'm going to get the story. And so finally, I'm walking my dog in the park in Atlanta one day, and I get a call on my cell phone, and I answer my cell phone. Linda Schaefer, please. I'm like, this is her. Linda, this is Benedict. I understand you want to talk to me about Mother Teresa. I'm like, yes, very much so. Well, Linda, I've been in a terrible car accident. You might have heard about it, and I nearly died. And I had 750,000 emails. I'm like, oh, that's great. I'm really glad you're doing better. Well, I'm still in the hospital room, in my hospital bed, but you can come up to New York and see me if you want. I'm like, I'll be there next week. So I got on a plane, and I spent a whole day with Father Groeschel, and his brother, Lawrence, who would take care of him, was gone all day. So I had to give Father Groeschel his medicines and took care of him for the whole day, and it was really amazing. And he told me some amazing, amazing stories. I have about 4 hours of video with him. And this is one of the stories he told me, which I thought was amazing. Mother Teresa wanted to open a contemplative branch for the Missionaries of Charity in the Bronx. Now they have a home, and she wanted the contemplative home. So Cardinal Cook, who liked to do everything, as Father Groeschel said, with spit and polish, took her to a home that used to be owned by the Dominican sisters. And this was going to be Mother Teresa's new home for the contemplative branch. So Mother Teresa walks through the home and said, "This will not do." And he goes, "Why not, Mother?" She says, "It's too fancy." And she walked out. That was it. She gave it up. And she was walking to the car, and Father Groeschel's following her, and she says, "Benedict, are you embarrassed?" He goes, "Very." She said, "Very good. The road to humility is through humiliation." I thought that was good. He told me that that he felt like he was in a little canoe watching Mother Teresa, on this enormous cruise boat, like sailing by. That was Mother Teresa's powerful message, not to take on the whole world like in the Bronx, but to take care of people one by one, little by little. In my book, Come and See a Photojournalist Journey into the World of Mother Teresa, the first one, I take you on a journey that reveals the mystery of love and humanity embedded in her soul. I invite you to look into her eyes with me and to feel God's unlimited compassion shining through a soul that was touched and blessed so she could serve him in the distressing disguise of the poor. So in my first journey in 1995, that's what I invite you on that journey with me to India, to the home where she served, the Missionaries of Charity, the headquarters on AJC Road. The second book, Come and See Part 2, continues that journey. but it's about her legacy and the work that she left behind, and all the encounters that I have with these priests and her nuns and all the people who knew her so well during her ministry, her as leader of the Missionaries of Charity since 1950. So how did that journey begin with me? First, I'm going to show you a video that I've compiled after the beatification, and then I'll take you to the streets of Calcutta and tell you a little bit about my journey in 1995. Haven't we all been on a journey? Have we all gotten on a train, on a bicycle, on an airplane? Sometimes, like with a feeling a bit of fear, like I'm about to embark on this journey. I didn't know that I was going to begin this journey 1995 when I first met Mother Teresa in Atlanta. I was working as a photojournalist. I was working in video production. I had a pretty good little business going. I had lost my husband to cancer, so I wasn't in a great state of mind. He had died very young. And then Mother Teresa came to Atlanta, and she changed my life. I had always thought that all I was ever going to be was living in Atlanta, working as a photojournalist. So how do you define yourself? Have you ever felt that maybe you wanted to redefine yourself? And I felt like Mother Teresa was really good at redefining people. She said, "Oh, so you think you're a photojournalist, do you?" There were people that went to her and said, "Mother, I want to be a nun." And she said, "No." And then there were other people who didn't want to be a nun. She says, "Why don't you become a nun?" So she was a great discerner of souls. She seemed to have that empathy, that something when she looked in your eyes, I felt that she knew me, that she knew me so well, so intimately, that maybe she knew me better than I knew myself. Have you ever met someone who knew you better than you knew yourself? And I think that we sometimes lose sight of who we are because we get lost in this world that tends to define us. And so then we have to go, we grow up and everybody's throwing all these definitions on us. And then one day we wake up and say, but that's not who I am. Who am I? Where am I from? I think I'm going to go on a journey. I think I want to get on a plane. I think I want to go somewhere. I want to redefine myself. And so I think that can happen many times. And some people might be described as, oh, she's escaping reality. There she goes off to India again. That was my parents. That was their voice. The voice of doubt. The voice of, why is she doing that again? They never asked me about Mother Teresa. They never asked me about my trip to India. So I went there with no support because I was escaping reality. And so I tell students, especially younger students when I speak at schools, it's good to listen to your parents, and sometimes it's good not to listen to your parents. Sometimes it's good to just listen to yourself. Sometimes it's good to listen to your own heart and find out what your own heart is saying, as opposed to what everyone else is trying to tell you you should do and what you should be. And so we create this box, and then we're in this box, and it's hard to get out of the box. So sometimes it takes a huge, horrible event in our lives, like a death, to motivate us to change. Sometimes that's what it takes. And so that's what I felt happened in my life. I needed something else than what I was experiencing in my life. And so when Mother Teresa came to Atlanta, June 15th, 1995, I was at the airport to greet her. I was the main photographer for the Archdiocese of Atlanta, and I was not a Catholic at the time. I was at the airport with the mayor of Atlanta, the archbishop, all these people. And when Mother Teresa got off this little jet in Atlanta, she looked like a queen. She looked like she had just walked out of heaven. And her clothes were old and faded and stained. And she was wearing this old pair of leather sandals. that she'd been wearing for many, many years, and she refused to get new ones, only to have the old ones repaired as needed. And she wore an old sweater with holes in it. And so this was a figure that was so beautiful to me. There were so many lines in her face. There was a line for every year that she had suffered. And I loved her face. I loved her face. I loved all those wrinkles in her face. And I seriously think that she's one of the most beautiful people I've ever encountered, because I think she was physically beautiful, because the physical beauty of her it went deep into her heart, and that's what you saw. And so, you know, a lot of people in my life say to me when they're angry with me, "Well, you're not acting like Mother Teresa." I'm like, well, because I'm not Mother Teresa. I wasn't asked to be Mother Teresa. That was not my calling. My calling was to respond to a call that she gave me. And what did she invite me to do? She invited me to come and see. In Atlanta airport, when she first walked up to me through the crowd of people, didn't even talk to anyone, but came right up to me. After going to the Archbishop, kissing his ring, and then she came right up to me in the airport. And I'm like, what is she doing? You know. And she came right up to me, and she held my hands right up to her heart, and she looked at me with that encountering, that moment where I encountered her, and I heard her say, "Come and see." So this was the invitation that I responded to. So I ask you, have you been invited? What was your latest invitation? We are all called, and I'm sure your priests tell you this all the time at church. What is your calling? When are you being called? The most difficult part is responding to it. Do we say yes or do we say no? A lot of times we say no because we're so fearful. We're so fearful of saying yes because what if, all the what ifs that could happen. Well, I had nothing to lose at this point. So when she invited me to come and see, I knew it just then, in that instant, in that very instant, that was my calling. And so all those years that I'd spent working so hard in the trenches as a photojournalist had all trained me to be right there at that moment and to be able to respond. So we can work, and wonder, what is this all for? Why am I doing this? Why am I working so hard? It's not taking me anywhere. I work and I work, I slave away, I serve, and I get nothing out of this. Well, it's all maybe because that moment arrives when we least expect it, when we are going to be called. And that's what I felt happened. And so within a month, I was on a plane to India, and I arrived in Calcutta, and I had no idea whether Mother Teresa was in town. I was like, oops, what did I do? And I had this amazing encounter on the plane, which I will share a little bit with you, where I became very fearful on the plane. I became like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? What if? And I was in Frankfurt airport, and I had one more flight to Mumbai. Then from Mumbai to fly on, you have to hit a lot of spots before you get to your final destination in India. And so I was in the Frankfurt, and I got a couple little arguments with people in the airport. You know, Germans are really something else. I'm half German. I know exactly what it's about. They're just like, you go up to the cafe bar. How much is the espresso? Can't you read? It's right there, the price list. Well, excuse me. And then they cut off an entire part of the airport where you can't sit, even though there's no chairs. So I go and sit. You can't sit there. Yeah, it's just like they're ruthless. So anyway, finally, I get on this flight. I like to joke, Father. You know, I just say this stuff. I don't really mean the Germans. They make these beautiful lenses, Zeiss lenses. They do have some really great qualities. They're great engineers.
I speak German. That's why I'm...
You speak German. But you know what I'm talking about. They're very straightforward. You know, you ask them a question, they don't smile back. They're lousy tippers, you know. But so I'm on this flight from Frankfurt, and I'm sitting on the seat, and I have two seats next to me that are actually free. And I think, oh my gosh, I'm going to be able to sleep. I'm going to be able to rest. And suddenly this man sits down, and he has this silver hair, and I just thought, oh no, I'm not going to be, I wish he would leave. I wish he would leave. And then he suddenly started to talk to me about myself. And I'm like, what? And he started saying, well, your father was very sick. I won't go on and on because this is kind of mystical, and we're not here to talk about mystical stuff. But he essentially, in the next 3 hours, told me about what my journey was about, and that I should never give it up, and that I was being called to do this calling. And by the end of my trip, you know, by the time I got to Calcutta, I knew. And all the years since then, I realized when I talked to Monsignor Esif about this man, this encounter on the plane, Monsignor Esif, who's a very mystical priest, said, oh, well, you met your angel. Your angel was there for you. Your angel was there to help guide you. He was helping you get to Mother Teresa before you backed out. So I've never forgotten this encounter, and it has always helped me to continue the journey. But when I got to Calcutta, I really was afraid. You know, you imagine arriving at midnight in the middle of the night. You have no idea what you're going to encounter. And when I finally hailed this little rickshaw, and I asked him, do you know where Mother Teresa is? You know, do you know where her home is? Oh, yes, yes. And so we got on this rickshaw and went to the Mother House, which is a beautiful, sprawling, white stucco building. And I knocked on the door, and I asked to have an appointment with Mother Teresa. And they invited me in. And of course, I still didn't know if she was there or not. And within a few minutes, I'm going to shorten the story a bit because I have been asked to talk more about some of the homes. Special request from Karen from Catholic Charities, because she's heard me speak a few times, but I've never talked about some of the homes where I worked, like the leper colony outside Calcutta. And so I'm going to just tell you this journey quickly about how when I was brought upstairs, and there was Mother Teresa standing in the hallway greeting this Indian family. I'm like, oh my gosh, here I am. I arrive in Calcutta, and Mother Teresa was right there. And within minutes, I was talking to her and asking her if I could document the homes in Calcutta. And she said no. Of course. You didn't expect her to say yes, did you? She invited me. She didn't invite me to take pictures. And she said, I don't need photographers. I need volunteers. So you go work at the orphanage tomorrow. I'm like, what? I mean, seriously, like babies? I mean, I was a photojournalist, you know. I wasn't a caretaker, a babysitter. And I'd never had a child. I didn't know what it was like to take care of a child. I never fed a child. And so the next day I began my first day at Shishu Bhawan. And the first thing we had to do was, let me put this down for a sec. The first thing we had to do when we got there was to put on an apron. All the homes in Calcutta and all worldwide, volunteers have to wear an apron. So last summer, I had this great idea to make my own Mother Teresa apron. So I designed my 2 aprons. Yeah, and these are my pictures of Mother Teresa that I put on a flower. And it said, find joy in serving. And I created another one as well. And I brought this apron with me to California over the summer because I went to visit the sisters in San Diego. They have a contemplative home there. And one of the sisters, her name was Sister Joy. And she put this apron on right away, says, oh, I love my apron! Because her name was Sister Joy. So anyway, it was beautiful, you know, going every single day and putting on the apron of service. And so after I'd been with the babies for a while, and you get into the swing of it, you learn how to feed babies after a while. It really is not that difficult, is it? I mean, they really don't choke. There was no Pampers, but all the clothing, all the diapers for the babies are made, and this is something most people do not know, are made by the lepers. Now, I said this at a talk once. I said the lepers. And I had an email. I get a lot of interesting emails. I got an email from a doctor. And he said, you use the incorrect terminology for leprosy. He gave the correct term for being afflicted with the disease. And I wrote back and I said, well, I'm very sorry I hurt your feelings or used an inappropriate definition of the disease, but that's actually how Mother Teresa herself described it. So I was just using her words. I didn't mean to offend. So, so all the diapers, that was part of our work also, was hand washing the diapers. And then later, Mother Teresa sent me to the Home for the Dying to work. And all the aprons there, all the aprons and all the clothing, everything is made at the leper colony outside Calcutta in this area called Titigar, which I'll talk about. And so after I'd been with the babies for a while, I went back to Mother Teresa. And I went generally to the Mother House every morning. And early morning, you had Mass at 5:30. Now, the sister's schedule started at 4:45. And Sister Tarcisia gave me the full story, which you'll read about one day, of what they did all day long, from 4:45 till 10 p.m. But, and the regiment that they went through, it was very difficult. And it was a very, very, very disciplined regiment. Now, the Missionaries of Charity is still one of the fastest growing Catholic humanitarian organizations in the world. And today there's over 5,000 sisters in 136 countries and over 800 homes. So it's a pretty phenomenal organization. But of course, when I was there working at the orphanage, I knew little about the organization itself. What you experience is the simplicity of the work. Just the simplicity of the work. You would never know the magnitude of the work that was international. And Mother Teresa was simply available every day, every day. So after Mass, sometimes we would sit and talk with her on this concrete bench, and she would kiss a miraculous medal and give it to us. So I had a few of those, most of which are gone, but now I still have a couple left. And so I went back to her and I said, now, I've been with the babies for a while. Do you think I can take pictures? And she said, oh, go write me a proposal. Does anyone here know how to write a proposal? My students don't. Okay, proposal is very important because it's the who, what, where, when, why do you want to do this, what's it about, when are you going to do it, what's going to be included, so forth. So I went back to my hotel room and I wrote a very academic proposal. Went to Mother Teresa, she looked at it and said, no. And at that point, I really dissolved into tears. I was very tired. I'd lost a lot of weight, and she was really putting me through the ringer. And so I was just like in her arms. She was like embracing me and holding my head and petting me like a little child. And she said, I have great idea. She loves that. Great idea, which of course you know is going to happen. You go back to your room tonight and you pray about this. And I will go back to my room and I will pray, and then you come back tomorrow and we talk. I'm like, pray? Okay. How do you do that, Father? No one taught me how to pray. So I went back to my room and I had this, like what I call an academic conversation with God. And I go back the next day, and I knocked on the door. I said, I have an appointment with Mother Teresa today. And it was 8 o'clock in the morning. They brought me up, and Mother Teresa comes out, and she's all happy. And she goes, yes, very good, very good. Now, you come here, stay with us, and you try our program here called a come and see program. And I'm like, no. No, you don't understand, Mother. I am not here to be a nun. That's what I mean. Sometimes she invited people who didn't want to be nuns to become nuns. And I said, no, Mother, I'm not going to be a nun. No, I am a photojournalist, you know? She goes, oh, yes, of course. How do you spell your name? And she pulled out this little pink piece of paper and wrote the date and the names of all the homes and said, dear sisters, let Linda Schaefer photograph the work. God bless you, Mother Teresa. So that became my passport, my entry to her world. And that little piece of paper, I don't know, have any of you ever received a piece of paper that was like not just a little piece of paper? It wasn't a degree, you know. I mean, I have like a couple nice looking degrees, but this was just like this little pink piece of paper, and that to me was more important than anything I'd ever received, was that letter from Mother Teresa giving me permission to be a part of her organization. And so after I'd been with taking pictures and running around, Mother Teresa stops me in the hallway one day and she said, stop taking so many pictures. You go work at the Home for the Dying now. I'm like, oh, no, Mother, no. So there began another journey, working in the very place that I had left a few years earlier, taking care of my husband at home, who was very sick, and now I was with people who were dying again. And it was the very first home Mother Teresa opened in Calcutta. In 1950 was the Calcutta, and it was the Home for the Dying. And the men were on one side, the women on the other, and it was donated by the Kali temple, a Hindu temple. So a portion of the temple is just devoted to Mother Teresa's work. And it's really interesting walking through Calcutta, through this area that's all pilgrims and Hindu pujas and worshiping going on, and then you see Mother Teresa's nuns running around. It's quite a paradox. So I was there for quite a while, and it was really a wonderful experience. And then one day, the sister in charge of the Home for the Dying said to me, Linda, and see, I knew her from Atlanta because she had opened the AIDS hospice home in Atlanta, which was a phenomenal place. And so she says, Linda, you look tired. You go rest, go somewhere. I said, okay. So this was my opportunity. I got on a train and I went to Varanasi, one of the oldest cities in India, and I took pictures on the banks of the Ganges and just had my photo outing for a few days and had a wonderful time. And when I came back, one of the sisters asked me, Mother Teresa would like you to photograph 2 very special masses for them. When the novices are taking their vows, and when the sisters in training are taking their final vows in November. Would you like to do it? Oh, okay. And so, again, now, you notice we have a little technical difficulties, and I say this every time. I know that when there's technical difficulties, Mother Teresa's around. Because she doesn't like technical stuff. She doesn't like computers, she doesn't like telephones, she doesn't like fax machines. They still don't have a fax machine in India. They use the store next door. And so I had a power pack for my flash unit, and all of a sudden I'm charging it, and the Indian electricity goes like this, and suddenly smoke's coming out of it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go take pictures this afternoon at St. Mary's, and my charger's gone. And so I went running up to this little camera store, And I said to the man, please help me, you have to fix this. Oh, madame, you can't, it's old, it's American, I can't fix that, we don't have anything here. I said, you have to fix it. He says, why don't you go down to electric stores in near Howrah, the railroad station, and you find someone there that maybe they fix it. I said, oh, you send a man with me, I give him rupees. I don't know anything around Howrah, it's a big railroad station. So a man came with me, and we went from electric store to electric store, trying to get someone to fix my charger. And everyone said, oh, no, madam, we can't do this American machine. I don't know how to fix this. And so then I remembered what Mother Teresa had said. And she said, pray. So I said, oh, okay. So I stood under this street light, and I said, seriously, I said, God, I really need you to fix my charger. Because I have a very important mission. And so I went into the next electric shop, and the guy goes, oh, yes, ding, 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 boom, started working. And I ran to the church, got there right in time to Mother Teresa walking in with all the sisters. You saw some pictures. That was in the church when they were taking their vows. And it was absolutely a phenomenal Mass to witness, because it was also the last time that Mother Teresa was present for her sisters before she became very sick and was removed from the public eye. So that was the last time she was there when the sisters were taking their final vows, the sisters who had been training for 10 years. And then little did we know that in a year, a little over a year, she'd be gone. This was the last opportunity to be with her, the last margin. There wasn't a margin for error. It was just so perfect, and how could that have been designed any other way? But right at that edge, that moment, that would have been lost forever. And so after the Mass, Mother Teresa gathered us all on a rooftop of the Mother House, and she gathered all her sisters around her, and she was in the middle, and she was holding a brown paper bag. I call her the brown paper bag lady, because everything's covered in brown paper. And she looked at me as if to say, are you finally happy? And I said, very happy. I just said it like, very happy, Mother. And I got this picture of her, the smiling one, smiling right at the camera. And so it wasn't long after that that I went back to Atlanta, and that's another part of the story that I'll share another time. But Mother Teresa, the second home that she opened in Calcutta was in this area called Titigar. It was an abandoned piece of property, and this is what she bought for the lepers. There's still over 3 million lepers in India, primarily because of the unsanitary conditions there. And so she bought this abandoned piece of property, and she opened the most phenomenal place that I visited a few times. It would take a 45-minute train ride to get to Titigar. And when you walked into the facility and crossed the railroad track, you would never know that this entire facility was devoted to lepers and their families, because they they have a schoolhouse there for the children. Their families are invited to go and live with them. So they are no longer humiliated. They are no longer abandoned on the railroad tracks of Calcutta, where they have been picked up by the Brothers of the Missionaries of Charity. Mother Teresa began the branch of the Brothers of the Missionaries of Charity to take care of the lepers, because it's very difficult work. And they begin their work in the early morning hours, and they go around with a medical unit, and they care for the lepers that are lying all across the railroad tracks. And they invite them to come with them back to the colony. Now, if they don't want to come back to the colony, they just go and treat them every day. Otherwise, they can come back and live at the colony. And in the colony, when you walk through these large rectangular rooms, you see these ancient looms that are still being used since the 1940s, which was the chakras, that was a symbol of India's independence. And so you see these women weaving this fabric and these big, gigantic looms, and then you suddenly realize, oh, she doesn't have an arm. Oh, he doesn't have a leg. Oh, they're missing fingers. And suddenly you realize, oh, these people all have leprosy. They've all been afflicted with a disease. And I met brothers and wives and sisters and families, entire families who'd been afflicted with a disease. But here, they were happy because they were working. They were creating they make all the saris for the sisters worldwide. They make the sandals. They make the diapers. They are completely self-sufficient. They grow crops. So what's interesting to me is that so many people have said that Mother Teresa wasn't about social justice, that she was about putting a Band-Aid on the problem, when in fact, I think she was about social justice. She was about, but she did it quietly. She never advertised it. She never advertised what she did. And even today, they are not allowed to advertise themselves. They're not allowed to talk to the press. They're not allowed to publicly talk about themselves and their work. You know, they just do it. They just do it. And so I was just shocked and amazed when I walked around. And the leper colony is called Gandhi Premnivas. So it's named after Gandhi. And there's this huge statue of Gandhi in the courtyard, a black alabaster statue. So I say, you know, Gandhi was the father of India, and Mother Teresa was the mother of India. And there you can see the work of the two of them, right there, the chakra, symbol of India's independence, and Mother Teresa helping those who can't help themselves by giving them their dignity back when they have lost it. That was her goal. And yes, very often she would stop by them right before they died, in their last breath, in the last moment, and she would say to them, "Would you like to see Jesus? Would you like to see Jesus?" And then she would bless them with holy water right before they died. And she did that time and time again. Bishop Curlin told me in Rome at the beatification that Mother, when he first saw Mother at the Home for the Dying in Calcutta, she was there on her hands and knees changing a bedpan from someone who was dying. And only Mother Teresa would do that. She would do anything that anyone else would. And she looked embarrassed that he would see her doing this herself. And you know, it was a journalist from England who first discovered Mother Teresa, Malcolm Mulbridge, and he went there and to do a story about Mother Teresa. He heard about this phenomenal nun in India, and he met Mother Teresa, and he wrote the book Something Beautiful for God. And that's when the world got to know about Mother Teresa and her work. But she had already been doing it for many years, just doing it tirelessly every day, opening homes consistently and all the time. And she had this ability to be able to just talk to presidents and dictators, and she treated each person exactly alike. It's as Monsignor Esif said to me. He said, Mother Teresa told him, never put yourself above anyone and never put yourself below anyone. Always see yourself as the same. So I thank you for having me here tonight, and I wanted to see if you might have any questions. You can clap. I kind of just shut it off, right? I was just wondering, you know, how late we were. It was like, it's been an hour. So there's many stories I haven't told, but I'm happy to answer questions.
How long were you there?
Oh.
How long were you there?
I was there on that trip for 6 months. But 6 months in reality felt like 6 years. I mean, every day was a very long day. I've been to India now 7 times. And so I did take 3 students with me several years ago. And they worked at all the homes that I worked at the Home for the Dying and the orphanage. And I'm planning to go there this summer to continue working on the book, come and see part 2. And this young man, if he's lucky, he'll come with me. to shoot some video. It's always an interesting issue getting cameras past all the nuns, but I've managed to do it a few times. So otherwise, we just talk to them. Yeah, it was an amazing 6-month journey, and but ever since Mother Teresa died, she has just kept kind of prodding me along. I went to the beatification in Rome, and it was there that I had this very profound experience of, I was just going there to honor Mother Teresa. And within a day of being there, all these news media asked me to be on their shows during the beatification. So I was actually live on CNN during the actual beatification in the skybox overlooking St. Peter's Square. 300,000 people gathered, Pope John Paul looking so frail, so weak, yet honoring this beautiful little sister of his and calling her the greatest icon of the Samaritan. And it was such a profound moment for me, sitting on the edge of the building overlooking St. Peter's Square and seeing the curtain parting and revealing now the Blessed Teresa of Calcutta, that I share with people that it was at that moment that I also felt that it was okay for me to be a part of this faith. So when I came back from Rome, my son and I joined the church in 2004. Any questions? Wow, a couple weeks ago, we went on for an hour with questions. I think, we started a little bit late. You all must be a little bit tired. I hope you enjoyed your visit with me, and I enjoyed my visit with you. And, let the journey continue for everyone. May you all have a beautiful journey, because we have each been called to complete a journey. And we don't always know what it is. Yes, sir?
Do you have any clue what your long-range plans have been?
You're asking me if I know my long-range plans?
If they've been revealed to you that are crazy.
Well, you know what? I never planned to teach. I never planned to, and I'm teaching at a university now in Oklahoma. I never planned to start book 2, but as soon as I was on that flight, an Alitalia flight coming back from Rome, I was interviewing Father James McCurry. And then all of a sudden, the next 2 weeks later, I was on my way to Baltimore. And then this woman called me from Pennsylvania. Linda Schaefer, I heard you talking, and you've got to come to Scranton, Pennsylvania. I'm like, why? Because there's a priest here who knew Mother Teresa better than anyone. And the Pennsylvania folks, I mean, I'm not trying to put anyone down, but, the Germans, the guys, people from Pennsylvania, but they're extremely loud. Like New Jersey, New York, they talk very loudly. And this woman's like, my ears burning. She said, Barbara Yankachek, you've got to come to Pennsylvania. You've got to meet Monsignor Esseff. I'm like, yes, fine, I will. I'll call him. So pretty soon I was on the phone with Monsignor Esseff. He was teaching at a seminary in Dalton, Pennsylvania. And a couple weeks later, I was on my way to Scranton, Pennsylvania, and spent 2 days with Monsignor Esseff. Now, he had known Mother Teresa extremely well, and he is the most humble priest, one of the most humble priests I've ever met. And I was sitting in the seminary having breakfast, and he was going to join me for breakfast, and then we were going to go and talk about Mother Teresa. So I'm sitting at this chair, and all of a sudden he says to me, and I'm the one asking questions, right? Not him. So he sits down next to me, he says, Linda, I'm so glad you have come. Tell me about your time with Mother Teresa. I said, Father, I'm here to ask you. He says, yes, but I would like to hear your story first. And all of a sudden, these tears start coming down my face, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And this other priest is sitting there. He says, don't worry about it. It happens all the time with Monsignor. Everyone cries. And then he invited me to come into the prison with him, where he does a lot of work. he speaks to the prisoners. So he asked me, Linda, would you like to come up to Scranton and we go and do a talk on Mother Teresa together at the federal penitentiary? Oh, sure. So we did a Mother Teresa talk together at the federal pen. And then I invited him to come to Atlanta, and he came, and we did a big talk together at the largest Catholic high school in Atlanta. And he got up, and he's this tiny little man like Mother Teresa, and he stayed at my house that night, and we had a beautiful dinner, and I invited anyone who wanted to come and meet with Monsignor Esif that night. My house, I lived in a little house in Atlanta, was packed. Packed. And he gave Mass in my house and had my son, who was just 7, assist him in the Mass. And then he consecrated my house to Mary. And then he would just talk to people, a line of people coming to counsel with him from Atlanta. Then the next day we go to St. Pius School, and I wanted him to talk. I mean, I already talked at St. Pius. So Monsignor gets up, and he just walks up to the microphone, and he looks around this room of very affluent kids. You know, you can't be poor to go to the private school in Atlanta. And he said, I'm very happy to be here with you today. He said, I know that many of you have been abused. I'm like, what is he talking about? He says, and many of you are in pain. And I wish I could talk to every one of you personally, but know that you are in my prayers. And all of a sudden, the whole place was filled with people crying. He didn't just start out by saying, hi, I'm Monsignor Esif. I spent all this time with Mother Teresa. No, I know many of you have been abused. I'm like, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. So obviously, I've met some phenomenal people. And I met this amazing woman, a doctor in California, who I interviewed in 2005. She was the first woman to invite Mother Teresa to California, and she was the first oncologist surgeon in California, in San Diego. And she worked at the Scripps Clinic. And so I called her in La Jolla, and she answered the phone, Dr. Anita Figueredo. And I said, Dr. Anita, I hear you knew Mother Teresa very well. I would like to interview you. And she said, well, you better hurry up. And I said, why, are you dying? She said, no, but I'm turning 90 next week. I don't know how much time I have left. So I said, well, I'm coming. I'll be there next week. And I flew out to California, and I spent the day with her, and the unbelievable stories about her times with Mother Teresa, and she just died. So 2 of the people I've interviewed have died. And so when I was back in San Diego this summer, I met with her daughter, Teresa, whose godmother was Mother Teresa. And Mother Teresa used to call Teresa all the time at the Figueredo home. And Dr. Anita Figueredo is just this tiny woman. And then I went to see a priest in La Jolla, actually in Los Angeles, who had been with Mother Teresa. And he told me a story about a woman who always wanted to see Mother Teresa. And she was in her 80s. And Mother Teresa had this, one of the people I'm going to interview in Tijuana is a doctor who was with Mother Teresa when she had a heart attack. She has a practice, cardiology practice in Tijuana. And so she was the one who made Mother Teresa leave Tijuana and go to the Scripps Clinic, even though she didn't want to go, and they put a stent in her heart. And so this priest, you can see how these stories all get woven together. This priest told me that he brought this woman down from Los Angeles to the Scripps Clinic to meet Mother Teresa. And they said, oh, no one can enter the hospital. It's off limits now, because everybody wanted to see Mother Teresa. She's very sick. You can't see her. So they said, no, you don't understand. We have to see her. It's very, very important. And they said, well, you go out and have some lunch, and when you come back, maybe we'll let you walk down the hallway. And Sister Nirmala will let you walk down the hallway. We'll leave the door open, and you can just look in the room and look at Mother Teresa. So they went walking by the room, and that's where Dr. Anita was staying with Mother Teresa. And they walked down the hallway, and this lady, I called her on the phone, and this is what she told me she saw. She saw Mother Teresa get out of her bed and come into the hallway, and this 84-year-old woman dropped on her knees and kissed Mother Teresa's feet. And Mother Teresa just smiled at her and patted her on the head. In reality, what happened, the priest was with her, he said, and the woman saw nothing, that Mother Teresa had no IVs, nothing, just walked alone in the hallway. But in reality, the doctors were like going nuts and were all around her and chasing her down the hall with IVs as she's going down the hallway. So what the 84-year-old woman saw was just Mother Teresa. What the priest saw was the doctors and the nurses and the IVs. So there you go. So I've talked to a few of the doctors from Scripps Clinic. Some amazing stories about her times there. And she said to Dr. Anita, she says, how are we going to pay for this? Oh, and Dr. Anita said, oh, don't worry. They're just writing this off. There's no bill. No bill for Mother Teresa. And when she died, Mother Teresa slept in this tiny room on a tiny little mattress with no fan. And a doctor in Salt Lake City, who's also a cardiologist, told me, who was friends with Mother Teresa, that he called to the Mother House and insisted that they put a fan in her room when she died. She said, okay. And so they put the fan in her room, and then the last thing she said was, I can't breathe. And she died. So it's like Monsignor Esseff said, her heart just gave out.